Hello folks, fine autumn day today, sun's out, good for making a quick video. I'd like to talk today about properties of the guitar, mainly plywood or laminate woods versus solid woods, because it seems to be a big concern for certain type of sellers and buyers in the acoustic guitar world. There are two types of people that buy guitars. I get players that are very experienced, have been playing all their lives. They're either very knowledgeable or they're sort of know-it-alls, you know, and they'll correct you if they think you're of the wrong opinion, and they'll sit and play for an hour and take an hour of your time over a Craigslist sale, and then possibly at the end of that hour they'll say, I'll think about it and I'll come back, or they'll ask a question like, can you prove to me that this guitar is completely solid? And or they'll come for a guitar that costs $100 and they'll expect $1,000 quality guitar. I get that a lot. Everyone's looking for a bargain. Everyone's looking for a larger-than-life acquisition, and in a way it's human, you can't blame them, but sometimes they're the worst kind of customers, if you like, people to deal with, and of course they're very, very opinionated. The other kind of seller is your newbies, you're buying the first guitar starters, and they're either all about looks, you know, whether they like a finish of a guitar. Of course, price. I think most people that are looking for a first guitar generally, you know, want to spend $100. That's the magic number. And it's hard to find a good quality, even used guitar for $100. And of course, they'll want a case with it and accessories if you've got them. So they're not so much concerned with craftsmanship and how something's made because they don't know about those issues, and it's an opportunity then to, not in an arrogant way, but try to disseminate some information. I often when I sell a guitar like something like this, I often get either a young kid or parents of a young kid coming to buy it, and usually they're happy to receive some information about how a guitar is made, or the provenance of the guitar, or what to look for, whether they buy yours or not. They appreciate getting some information because perhaps they're not musicians themselves, and they need, you know, obviously details and information to be able to make decisions for their children. Usually they're quite accepting of it. Occasionally not, but and the number one question that I get is from the more experienced buyers is it solid? And there seems to be this prevailing logic that plywood or laminate bad, solid wood good. And I would say 70, 75, 80% of the time that's fair enough. You know, you're going to get more resonance typically from a solid piece of wood than you are plywood, especially if it's crisscrossed with cheaper woods or less quality woods underneath the outer ply. That's a fair enough assessment, but it's not 100% true. I have played laminate top guitars in the mid-range that are better than cheap solid wood guitars. It's just a fact. There are some very, very good Guilds. There are some very, very good Alvarez, even Yaris, and Martins that are either laminate or partially laminate, Blue Ridges as well, that sound fantastic. And I've played some really cheaper solid wood guitars, or at least solid top guitars that don't necessarily sound good. So it's not, you know, foolproof. It's still always best to play the guitar, not be obsessed by those types of things. Another thing that I get too a lot is people that will look down at a guitar or poo-poo a guitar if the top's solid and the back and sides are not. I had a gentleman trying out a guitar that I was selling fairly recently who loved the guitar, loved the sound of the guitar, loved the setup, was about to buy it, but wanted proof that well, first of all, we could prove that the top was solid because we looked through the sound hole and we could see the grain going down and around. There were no plies, and on most guitars that's fairly easy to see. You look around the sound hole and you can see whether there's that line where the plies meet, or if there are grain lines going around through the sound hole to the other side. It's not always possible to tell because some sound holes are bound, and the binding will obscure that view. Also, I have actually seen guitars that the ply starts about a ½ inch outside of the sound hole, so the sound hole looks solid, but the guitar is reinforced with a sheet of ply, usually around the bridge section here, or around the top where it meets the neck block. It's not common, but I've seen it when I've been inside of guitars. So it's not 100% that you can just look at the sound hole and determine whether something is solid or plywood. But coming from the violin world, I got my training in the violin world, and when I watched violin makers and restoration folks working on 16th, 17th, 18th century instruments, you got a good idea about wood and tonal properties. And most of your sound comes from the top, particularly with spruce and cedar, your softwoods, and your back, which is usually a hardwood of some sorts, either mahogany, maple, rosewood, sometimes walnut, or more exotic hardwoods like zebra wood. That's mostly integrity, structural integrity. So you can have a very, very, very good guitar that has a solid top and a ply back and sides. I've got a couple of old Yaris that the back of the Brazil wood is 2-ply, where they crush sheet it for integrity. And people will say, "Oh, well, I don't want that guitar. It's not a solid back." Now, of course, all solid guitars a lot of the time are going to sound great, but it's not actually a foolproof judgment system. The back and sides of a guitar with the kerfling, with the bracing, are mostly for structural integrity. You've got hundreds of pounds of string pressure going on a softwood top, which would crush if you didn't have the structural integrity of the hardwood in the sides and the back. So they're doing a slightly different job. Yes, the sound does reverberate around and come through the sound hole. That's true. But it is actually your top that's producing a lot or most of the sound. With a violin or a cello, of course, you have something called a sound post, which sits perpendicular to the top, connecting the top to the back, which moves the sound through the top, through the sound post, and helps reverberate it around the back. But even then, your tonal properties that are coming from that reverberated sound through the back are different from the sound that's coming through the spruce or the softwood on the top. So it's a very scientific. It's to do with physics and scientific components, how a guitar's built, how a violin's built, and it's not the absolute be all and end all to have a solid back and sides. You can actually have some excellent guitars. I was looking at a Faith guitar. It's a British-made guitar that has a laminated back and sides. It just sounds absolutely wonderful. And of course, it's different from guitar to guitar. I mean, you just cannot make sweeping statements about wood composition. This here is a spruce top guitar. It's solid. I'm sure the back and sides are laminated. It's a cheaper guitar. I've had 2 or 3 of these. When I set them up, they sound slightly different. Some are slightly better than others, even though they're built exactly the same. So I just wanted to put a video out there to explain that you know, if you have something that has a solid top but a laminate back and sides, or just a laminate sides, that actually does happen. It doesn't mean all of a sudden that's a worse guitar. If you have a guitar that plays really well and it has a ply top, as a lot of mid-range guitars do, you know, some really nice guitars, Yamahas, Alvarez, that make ply top, spruce ply guitars that sound decent, that sound good. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference if you A/B them, if you play them side by side. So I think it's important to know whether you're new coming into buying guitar, or whether you're, you know, a seasoned player. You know that there are no hard fast rules about this. You play the guitar, see how it sounds. Go with your immediate gut, your instincts, how something feels and sounds, plays, and use that as a judgment. You know, I think some of the more experienced guitarists get really hung up on technicalities, to a fault almost, where they miss opportunities. Having said that, of course, we're all looking for nice solid wood instruments. There are so many fine ones out there. I think there are a lot of surprisingly good ones in the lesser known echelons, which is kind of what my channel's all about. But anyway, always play a guitar. Don't rule it out for some preconceived notion. Play them, check them out, see how they feel in your hands, see how they make you play, how they affect your fingers. That's the biggest that's the best way to choose, and not get too hung up on preconceived ideas. See you next time.